All right, folks, welcome to another edition of the Stats and Scars feature episode of the Shatter the Script Network. We're back with another episode. Happy New Year from the crew. I'm joined here by Ryan and Jacob, the medical guy and the analyst, as their nicknames. We're going to get into some NFL playoffs, specifically like Wildcard weekend. We're going to get into the college football playoff semifinal, maybe some coverage from the quarterfinal week last week. And we're going to get, of course, we got some big DB list candidates later on in the episode as well. But we're happy to be back. We're going to be doing exclusive, basically, playoff coverage for the rest of these episodes because, as many know already, the fantasy football season is over, so injuries and stats are now on hold until next September, so we can cover wherever we want. But yeah, if you're a first-time listener, if you're joining us for the first time, appreciate you joining us, as my dad is calling me. Hey, did you get the deer meat?
Hey, did you I see the
Yeah,
lawn needs mowing. Can you head on over?
yeah, exactly. What the heck? Yeah, so if you're a first time listener, you can follow us on all platforms searching at Shatter the Script. That's YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, or on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. So welcome to the show. Well, let's go ahead and get right into NFL playoffs. And of course, wild card weekend. We got a bunch of teams that snuck their way in week 18, a couple of teams that kind of shelled other teams from making it in, such as like the Bengals and whatnot. But let's start off things hot with the Los Angeles Chargers at the number 5 slot facing against the Houston Texans, our local team, and what we kind of think predictions for this game. Of course, Jim Harbaugh, first season as an NFL head coach after returning from Michigan. D'Amico Ryans with C.J. Stroud in kind of an off year. They had a very poor division, and they're leading the charge in the wild card round. But Jacob, can I start with you, brother, if you're ready for
Yeah.
some of our predictions and kind of overview for the wild card weekend?
Yeah. So Texans Chargers. This is I don't know. This is the Texans slot. I don't know if y'all have been seeing all that, but like the past like 7, 8 playoff games, they've had the same time
It's
slot.
50, I think it's the last 12
Oh,
or every
God.
playoff game they've ever played.
It kind of reminds me of like when the Astros make the playoffs and they get stuck in like the 107 slot. Like
Yeah.
every matchup they have, even if they're not playing in the wild card weekend or whatever, it's like, hey, Houston Astros, who I mean, we could be honest, they've been a dynasty for the last 8 years, and then it's like, yeah, we're gonna put them at midday, and so it's just funny seeing how that always draws. I guess because they're in the Central or whatever. Um, but I was looking at some of the injury report for the Chargers, and it has J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, obviously, and Quentin Johnson on the injury report for questionable. And to be honest, I mean, we can see the difference between the Chargers when they don't have Dobbins and when they do have Dobbins. I know Justin Herbert I mean, he's really good, and they've kind of trusted him a little more at the end of the season. But it's kind of going to be the thing is like, do the Chargers have the weapons to keep up? And if they don't have Quentin Johnson, who went nuts last game, who seems to be doing a lot better this year, and they don't have Dobbins or Dobbins is banged up on a limited thing or whatever, it's going to be really tough. I'm going to go with the hometown state here. I know how as much as everybody hates that, but I've got the Texans winning 21-18. I think they kind of get this offense figured out. To be honest, I mean, it needs to be a Stroud, Collins, Mixon show. Like he should have
Only.
like 16, 17 targets this game. And then hope to God Mixon runs for his, crazy 142 touchdowns or whatever it is that he always does this year. But I've got the Texans winning by 3.
Ooh.
Wow.
Ryan, what your predictions on this game? Your favorite team, the Texans, with my favorite player, Kaimi Fairbairn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Chargers are favored -2.5. Over under was 44.5. Just to recap, like I have some quick notes on the Chargers. They finished 11-6 this year. Key wins. They had 2 wins against the Broncos, but they had a lot of losses against the Chiefs, Ravens, Steelers, and Bucks. And then on the other side, you got the Texans. I think the key win for them this year was the Bills. And then losses, Vikings, Lions, Chiefs, and Ravens. Those are all playoff teams and big teams in the NFC and the AFC. So I think to sum it up, I've got a lot of analysis on them, but I'm gonna make it short and sweet. Is that I think this is pretty even between these two teams. Chargers have nothing to lose here, as Harbaugh is in year one and has definitely met expectations for the year. A playoff win for the Chargers would be an accomplishment, and I think the plan for them is pretty simple going into the offseason. They need to find some weapons. Kind of to what Jacob was saying. For the Texans, I think deep down, if you ask any Texans fan, they're pretty disappointed with how this year's gone, and I don't think if you're asking them for their expectations on are you going to the Super Bowl or not, I would say they're all probably lukewarm to cold. This year was supposed to be something different given the additions on defense. I mean, they had got Daniel Hunter, Shakir or whatever his name is, the guy that delivered the blow of the NFL. And then on offense, I mean, you got Diggs, Mixon that they added, and Nico and already there. But overall, both of these teams haven't been able to beat the top dogs. That was kind of the reason I wanted to highlight their losses. I don't think they have the capability to right now either. Chargers are in building mode with Harbaugh being there the first year, and the Texans are just kind of a disappointment right now. So all that to say, I actually have the Chargers beating the Texans 31-28 in a nail biter. I think a lot of the Texans' woes that I've been talking about offensively is going to really show in this game alone. So all that to say, whoever wins this game, I don't really see them either having a major impact in the playoffs. Like I don't think if the Texans advance, I don't think they're going to be able to beat the Ravens. They haven't. They beat the Bills in a hiccup game. The Bills are a completely different juggernaut right now, and the Chargers just haven't been able to make that step either. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think that's really good analysis, and I think it's good that you highlighted, the losses for both these teams, because I was going to go into that a little bit too. But I think what's interesting about the Chargers, real quick, is like the Chargers, I feel like and the Broncos are in very similar spots to where they have almost every key position filled.
I've literally got that right here too.
Yeah, and it's like the only thing that's missing is some key playmakers. Like Broncos they don't really have a tight end. They don't have a running back. They have Cortland Sutton, who's basically like a Walmart Mike Evans. And you're just like, okay, you go into a draft and the only thing you need is a wide receiver, and you kind of already got one with Lad McConkey. It makes your job a whole lot simpler. So that Joe Alt draft pick last year, big help. But yeah, I agree. I don't think these teams are going to be doing too much damage. I haven't seen enough from CJ Stroud this year. It's like, honestly, it's a lot like Prescott's second year, to where it's like, okay, we were going into the playoffs and we missed the playoffs by a game, and you're just like, the ceiling isn't there for either of these teams. But I'm going to lean with Justin Herbert. He's had a very efficient year this year. I think when he's forced to throw, he's highly efficient. He gets the job done. Very few turnovers. And Harbaugh knows how to really control the clock. So I've got the Chargers up 27-23 in this matchup and advancing to the next round. And we've been saying all year that Texans were probably a first-round exit.
Yeah.
Or at least I have.
They're not here. They're whoever they play next, whether they draw the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs. I just don't. They don't have the firepower right now. Granted, that might be to injuries, but it's also looking back at the historical evidence of the last 18 weeks that we've been, analyzing. They're just not what the expectation was at the beginning of the year, which everybody was claiming that they had a really big shot at being contenders with the top three juggernauts in the AFC. So that's just an honest opinion. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Going into the next one. Sorry, Jacob. I looked like you had something to say, so I was like holding off the.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay.
Y'all summed it up pretty good.
Okay, cool. All right, let's move into another part of the AFC for the NFL playoff wild card. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers, playing in Baltimore for the number 3 seeded Baltimore Ravens. Man, the Steelers really fell apart at the end of the season. Yeah. A fun fact is like Kenny Pickett went 10-7 with the Steelers, and then Russell Wilson and Justin Fields come in and they also go 10-7. And I think Steelers fans are in just this weird spot where they're just like, I don't even know what to think of Mike Tomlin anymore, because you could upgrade, quote unquote, at quarterback and get the same result. So going into this one, We'll start with Ryan. I'll loop our way back around with this analysis. Who do you got winning this game? I feel like this is kind of an easy one if things go the way it should. But what are your thoughts in this matchup?
Well, I was just going to rant about what we talked about at the beginning of the year, and it starts with the wins and losses, which um, the Ravens started off 0 and 2. And if you remember back in week 3, we did like our teams of 0 and 2. Who do we think is going to be in the playoffs? And we all said, well, it's going to be the Ravens. And I mean, they look probably one of the better looking teams this year. I mean, they've beaten the Bills, the Bengals, the Broncos, the Chargers. They've lost to the Chiefs, Eagles, and they did lose to the Steelers earlier this year, but totally different outcome. They look really, really good. And to Jared's point, the Steelers, this is like a copy and paste Steelers team of like the last 10
Yeah.
years. They look really good on defense ever since Ben Roethlisberger's left. They look really good on defense. You know, they're middle of the league overall now because of the last couple of games. Bottom barrel in passing, the 24th. Heavy on the rushing. They're a good stop the run football team. And then on offense, I don't know if it's Arthur Smith or George Pickens' crash out attitude, or if it's Mr. Unlimited just being a dumbass. They look terrible on offense. So I'll just get straight to the prediction off of that. I mean, we all know the Ravens' offense is running at light year speed, and the addition of Derrick Henry was a big help to that all year. But I think the Ravens kill the Steelers. I mean, this might be, I would put this up as the most boring game of the weekend, despite it being a heavy rivalry game. You know, this is one of the biggest rivalries in the NFL, probably the biggest. But I've got the Ravens winning 35-14, and I think they have a good
Oh,
chance of winning the Super Bowl if they continue with the way they're playing. They're just going to have to get over the Bills and Chiefs eventually. So
Yep,
we'll get to that next week, but
they got to
that's
climb
kind
the
of the
ladder.
yeah. You got to. I want to see how the Bills play. You know, the Chiefs have the bye, but I think the Ravens have a good chance this year if they can get over that hump, and that's been the question all year. So
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with Ryan a little bit. My score is not as big. But to me, the Texans, the Chargers, and the Steelers are very similar teams, and how they win or how they have a chance to win is they win one way. Okay, the Steelers and the Chargers are very similar to where outside of a couple games, they've got to win these gritty, ugly games. The Texans, on the other hand, have to light up the scoreboard to win and stuff like that. Outside of a
hmm
couple games, obviously, and things like that. And I think it's similar to, like the Chargers with the firepower. I know George Pickens can be good. We've seen he can be a good weapon, and Najee Harris and Warren are both decent. But it just seems like they don't have the firepower, whether it be a quarterback, whether it be weapons on the outside. Obviously, their defense is very good. Um, but I mean, unless this is a snow game, I don't really see there being any chance for the Steelers to win. Um, and on contrary, the Ravens, I mean, they've got multiple ways they seem to be able to win, whether it be the rushing attack, whether it be Lamar taking over and passing it and going crazy, or whether it be both. Um, and so I've got the Ravens winning 28-17. I know it seems like a closer score, but I'm sure it's going to be a BS touchdown there at the end with like a minute and 15 left. Um, and so I just don't think the Steelers have the firepower. And I think that's a good thing to bring up about Tomlin, because a decade of, yes, not having a losing season, but also, what has it been, 15 years since a Super Bowl?
Yep.
And the last 10 years, like you said, have been copy and paste. You know, okay offense and then really good defense. And then I did see another stat about the whole, you brought up Kenny Pickett was 10-7. Russell and Justin Fields are 10-7. I did see a stat to where now that the end of the year is over and they've played very similar amount of games, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson had basically the same QBR, which was like 51.5 or something like that. So it's funny because, Russell Wilson came on like pretty hot. His first couple games, you're like, oh, okay, maybe we're getting the classic Russell. And then we saw it similar to how it's been most of his career, where it's like, hey, let Russ cook. And then when he says that, it's like, terrible. And
Yeah.
so I thought that was a very interesting stat because everybody talked about how anemic the offense was in the beginning of the year, and then outside of 3 or 4 games, the offense has kind of gone back to pretty ugly. So I've got the Ravens 28-17.
That's exactly where I was going to take it. Was like with Russell Wilson, it was the same narrative when he was with Seattle. Was like we get MVP Russ for 6 to 7 weeks or whatever, and then you're like, oh, this guy's got got every vote. He's playing incredible, no turnovers, like 300 yards passing a game, winning, and all this different stuff. And then the back half of the season is just an absolute disaster. And it's the same thing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, except he started a little late. What did he become the starting quarterback right after the Dallas game, and was really good for like 4 or 5 weeks. You're like, okay, like Russ is cooking. And then the back half of the season, it was just like, okay, we're back to Denver Russ, and it is a washed aspect, and I don't think either quarterback's going to elevate you past where they've both been playing, the level that they've both been playing at this year. So yeah, and with Lamar playing at an MVP level, and Derrick Henry being the second most valuable player on that team and just completely electrifying the offense, I don't really see the Steelers outscoring that, but I can see them putting up a good fight, which is why I'm not comfortable putting the Ravens over 30 points. I can definitely see it happen if like Russell Wilson starts turning over the ball like crazy, which is very possible. But I've got the Ravens winning this game 24-13. I just think that Ravens get a lead pretty early. They just hold it the whole second half, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Ravens were up 21-0 at halftime and then just kick a field goal in the second, and Pittsburgh scores a couple of points. But yeah, I don't think the Steelers are ready. I think they'll start questioning Mike Tomlin once the season is over, and we'll see if they actually make a different move. But yeah, all right. So everybody's got across the board the Ravens winning their matchup. We'll go into the Denver Broncos at Buffalo Bills. I'll start off with this one, to be honest with you. I mean, MVP. My MVP choice is Josh Allen for this year, for reasons that I've discussed over the year. But I've really liked what Bo Nix has done as a rookie, and you can call him a rookie, and he's an older rookie. I mean, what is he, 24, 25 years old, played like 6 years in college football. So a lot of people make good points. Like, yeah, he should be panning out in his first year. He should be, and that's what's good about quarterbacks like that who play, like when they're playing great in college, you're telling yourself, oh, well, he's been in college forever. Well, a lot of NFL scouts like that number of reps in college. They don't like those as much as those early guys because they're taking more of a chance. They've seen a ton of film on Bo Nix, and now this year you're getting to see it. Electrifying rookie, really brought this team way beyond expectations, but it ends here with the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, by far the most valuable player. I think James Cook is like the only accessory player on their team that went over 1,000 yards by like 9 yards, and the rest has just been all Josh Allen. So I expect Josh Allen to get 3-4 touchdowns in this game, be really efficient. One thing to be concerned about is the Broncos reportedly are really good at keeping quarterbacks within the pocket. So Josh Allen's really going to have to improvise within the pocket, which I'm sure he's capable of. I've got the Broncos winning this game. I've got the Bills winning this game 28-20 in a comfortable game. I think a backdoor cover might be at store.
Nice.
Jacob.
Nice. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Bills win this one. I think this is going to be, more of a high scoring game. Just because we've seen how the Broncos, it seems like they're never really out of the game. And for having a rookie QB, like you said, Sean Payton's really seems like he's fine with being like, all right, Bo Nix, go sling it around. And he does. And so I have the Bills winning. I think it's just the Bills are just a better overall team. And I think this is this is looking like it's shaping up to be the year for Josh Allen, if there ever was a year, because it seems like he, one, is not turning the ball over as much. Two, it just looks like he's in complete control, whether it be, whether they have to run the ball, whether they have to use their, secondary running back to carry their receiving core, or whether, he has to use his assortment of okay receivers and stuff like that. Since Amari Cooper really hasn't panned out necessarily as much as everyone thought that trade was going to work. Um, but I just think overall the Bills are just a better team, and I think this is going to be, just the quarterback being better than the other quarterback. So I have the Bills winning 34-28.
Nice. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Y'all hit on a lot there. I think I would just finish off that with Jared's point that he made earlier. Is the Broncos remind me a lot of the Chargers, in the sense of they got a lot of building to do, but also in their schedule. I mean, I already pointed out earlier that the Chargers didn't really beat any of the playoff teams. Well, the Broncos didn't really either. I mean, they beat the Chiefs with Carson Wentz playing quarterback at the end of the year, but other than that, they've lost to the Chargers, the Ravens, the Chiefs at the beginning, the Steelers, and I put the Bengals in there too. But I think they're kind of in the same boat as the Chargers. They have a lot to improve on, and they might be in a better situation because they've got Bo Nix on a rookie contract. Um, but other than that, I think the Broncos also exceeded expectations while the Bills had an awesome year. This was a year that everybody kind of expected the Bills to kind of do a slight rebuild, with Diggs leaving, the emotional loss against the Chiefs again last year. But that didn't happen because, like Jared pointed out, Josh Allen had an MVP season. And I think they also have a very good shot to make the Super Bowl as well. But it comes down to the same thing for the Ravens. It's like, how can they get over these humps? How can they beat the Ravens? How can the Bills beat the Ravens? How can the Ravens beat the Bills? How can they both beat the Chiefs? So, to every point that was already made, I think Josh Allen just single-handedly wins this game like he's done in the last couple of games. He's playing lights out. I think that he should be considered heavily for the MVP, and we'll get into that later. But I've got the Bills. This is going to be a tough game either way. I just think it's going to be tough. The Broncos, I've been preaching all year, their defense is top-notch. But I think the Bills win this game 21-17.
Yeah. Bills
Nice.
across the board. Moving over to the NFC. We've got the Green Bay Packers as the 7th seed going into play. The Philadelphia Eagles as the 2nd seed. Away game for the Packers, obviously. The Packers, to be honest, they've been banged up all year. They kind of didn't finish the season as strong as I had hoped, but obviously when they're a healthy team, they are one of the best in the league and in the most powerful division with the NFC North. But you're going against the NFC East best, Saquon being a 2,000-yard rusher. Jalen Hurts, I think, is still in concussion protocol, and I guess if Jacob knows anything about that, he can kind of go into it on his part, which I guess I can lead into your first initial prediction, and then we'll loop back around. But yeah, let's hear your outlook on this game, huh?
Yeah. So, like you said, the Packers are banged up. However, if you've watched a lot of the season, which we all have, the Packers can really throw some duds out there, and
Yeah.
primarily on offense, which is very strange to me because obviously Matt LaFleur being the offensive mind, the QB guru, stuff like that. I know y'all have all heard my spiel on how they use their receivers this year, with because they seem to have a slew of them that are all very crafty individuals, and then Christian Watson, who's kind of a streaker down the field, and you saw it this year. He had like 30 catches for like 700 yards or something. Like, it was insane. And obviously we see that the reports came out that he's out this game, so it's going to be very interesting to see how this offense kind of runs and everything. To me, it seems like LaFleur kind of gets a little bit too cute with his offense. You've got dudes like Dubs, Wicks, Reed, Watson, not Jones, Jacobs, and then even their backup running back, who I'm forgetting his name, Wilson, who they all seem to be able to produce, but it seems like they just get a little bit too cute with their offense. Their defense has been fairly top notch all year. And then there was also reports that Jordan Love did do something to his hand the last game, primarily his throwing hand, so that'll be interesting to watch coming up. And then going to the Eagles with Jalen Hurts, concussion protocol. He's still in protocol because he does have to complete one full contact practice before he's completely cleared from concussion protocol. I think it was probably more of an extended one just because they knew he wasn't going to play. So they're like, hey, let's not do anything stupid. Let's make sure, like, you don't want to do anything stupid anyway, but you'd rather something not happen right before you're going into the biggest game of the year so far. I think he'll be able to clear. However, I think if he doesn't clear protocol, it seems like their offense has been, they kind of, the opposite side of the Packers, they have it figured out, right? They have Saquon Barkley, who they rely heavily on, and then, when they want to change things up, it's A.J. Brown going deep. It's Devontae Smith on a cross route or a post route. And I mean, if there's one thing we can commend about the Eagles, they know how to win with their game plan, and that's how they win. In saying that, I have the Eagles winning 28-14. I don't think this is going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be one of those, like you mentioned earlier, with one of the previous games, it's going to be like a, 14-0 at half or 21-0 at half, and then they score another touchdown in the fourth quarter or starting off the third quarter to kind of cement it. And then, you get a couple of BS touchdowns in the second half to keep it somewhat close. But that's what I have. I have the Eagles winning 28-14.
Yeah, nice. Ryan?
Yeah, keep that same energy. I mean, with both quarterbacks questionable, I think Hurts is going to play, to Jacob's point. I'm a little concerned about Love, but I think Jacob nailed it on the head. The Packers have been up and down. If you've watched a lot of their games, it's been, I don't know if it's injuries. I don't know if it's because Love can't stay on the field. I don't know if it's because they can't decide which receiver they like. It's just been kind of interesting to watch them. I mean, they played the Lions earlier in the year in that game where they were at home. It was raining, and the Lions just kind of over-muscled them. But for the Eagles, as much as we are all Cowboys fans and hate the Eagles, you have to give them credit. They've been pretty consistent and winning, and I think they continue that trend here. I think the Eagles win 35-21, depending on if Love plays. But yeah, I think Jacob nailed it on the head. The Packers this year are not as exciting, and if you remember at the beginning of the year, I told everybody pump the brakes on the Packers, and here we are. I mean, yes, they made the playoffs, but they're not a really exciting team right now. They're not. But the Eagles are consistent, and if they try and play without Love, and they have to go to this Malik Willis wing T bullshit, I think the Eagles' run defense is gonna stuff them. So I've got the Eagles winning this game, and I'm afraid to say it, but I kind of like the Eagles to at least make the NFC Championship here.
Yeah.
They look really good. They're getting the rest for Saquon and Jalen and last week, and I just look around the league at, like, we'll get to the Lions, but I don't really see an NFC team holding back on the Eagles. Just, they have a lot of good breaks, is what I'm trying to say. So
yeah.
And I'll hit on the Lions, what I
that
mean.
roster, the Eagles roster is like full of just dudes.
Yeah.
Like just talent all around. So kind of like I said with Buffalo, I think if there was a year for the Eagles, like this has got to be it.
Yeah. You've got the 49ers on a down year. You've got the Cowboys on a down year. You've got a shaky, pretty good, but shaky Vikings team. You've got an absolutely decimated Lions defense.
Yeah.
And then outside of the Lions, the Vikings, and the Eagles, like, the NFC is pretty handleable. I mean, what if you pull the Bucks? You don't think you can beat the Bucks in the first round or in the second round? Like, they should easily handle the Bucks. I think if they somehow pulled the Vikings, they could easily handle the Vikings.
Yeah.
If they play the Lions, I think the Lions, even if they are at home, if you watch the last couple Lions games, their defense it's just they're so decimated
Oh,
on defense.
yeah, it's bad.
So yeah,
Yeah. I think I'll hit on pretty much every aspect. The only thing I would add is, when the Packers are at their best when they started handing Josh Jacobs the ball as like their way to win. It's like, okay, we're going to lean on the run game. We're going to take the pressure off of Jordan Love, and which is weird because last year Jordan Love went on that 10-game streak or whatever it was and just cooked the NFL in the passing game. But with the injuries that they've had, and like Jacob mentioned, like Jaden Reed just gets shut down after like the first quarter of getting 3 or 4 catches, and it's just like, or we're not going to go back to him. But the Packers, I think, play their best ball when they get Josh Jacobs multiple touchdowns and red zone targets and whatnot. And on the flip side, with the Eagles, I just wanted to mention something that was funny to me was, Cooper DeJean was talking about like, all right, who was your like welcome to the NFL moment? And Cooper DeJean was like, Adam Thielen, and I'm like, dang, bro, like it really be your own people.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, out of all the people, the Carolina Panthers 34-year-old Adam Thielen, like the old vet still got it. But yeah, like just speaking on those guys, Blankenship and Cooper DeJean, like they've panned out pretty well for that secondary. They've got an interior that does a great job. Of course, like, Jacob mentioned again, like all those dudes. I mean, they've got 2 receivers that can handle it, and they've got a tight end that's very efficient when he's healthy. They've got the best running back in football this year. They got a quarterback that can run the offense the way they see fit. So I've got the Eagles winning pretty comfortably because I think that Green Bay Packers, I think they just need the season to be done and recoup. 24-14, Eagles get the W, moving on into the divisional round. So, well, this next game, we've got another NFC East team. You got the Washington Commanders at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Honestly, I think this game is a lot more interesting than people may think. And, this is like, the 3rd year in a row where NFC South team is hosting a playoff game with like a worse record than the entire playoffs. Like, the rest of the teams have more wins, even the wild card teams, and like the NFC South is just kind of below par. And honestly, with it, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody has it off the top of their dome, but I think the Buccaneers ripped the Commanders to shreds earlier in the year, like 33-17 or
30
something.
It's 37-20.
37-20.
Week one.
So, and it's kind of goes back to what we talked about with Dan Quinn at the Cowboys. It kind of translated over to Dan Quinn on the Commanders. Is that when they play good teams, they kind of get routed a little bit on defense. And, you're going to get that Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore, spicy matchup there. But, outside of that, I kind of want to ride with Baker Mayfield here. I think the Commanders had a great year, but I think the Bucs put up a 30 bomb on this Commanders defense, and it's a 34-27 win over the Commanders. I think the Buccaneers surprise them. But Ryan, I'll go to you, and then we can go back to Jacob.
Yeah, I'm just checking it today, which it's Tuesday. Bucks
Wednesday.
minus 2 and it's Wednesday. Sorry, Bucks
It's
minus
Wednesday,
2.5.
I do know it's coming.
And the Bucks are favored minus 2.5 over under 49.5. And like, I've been calling out key wins and key losses for both teams in a lot of these matchups. And if you go look at who the Commanders beat, it's not all impressive. They beat the Bengals and the Eagles. Those are the only 2 that I could find. And then the Bucks, theirs aren't even really that impressive either. They beat the Eagles, I think, earlier in the year, and then they beat the Commies and the Chargers. So they've already beaten the Commanders. But I'm kind of shocked to see the Buccaneers favored in this game. I think it's just because they're at home. But I actually like them in this game, like Jared says. I think this is kind of the time where Baker goes crazy in the playoffs. And I think the Commanders had an easy go at it this year. If you go look at their schedule, it was not that difficult. And they're kind of been shaky towards the end of the schedule. And this is kind of a recurring theme with Cliff Kingsbury offensive teams. And like Jared just said, Dan Quinn's defense. They're not the most talented. This is kind of like a high-grade year for the Commanders. and they have a lot to build off of with Jaden Daniels. But I think I'm going to take the Bucks in a close game. I think it's going to be a shootout. It's going to be 35-34. And again, this is one of those games where like whoever wins this game, I just don't see them advancing and making a shake in the playoff picture for the NFC.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And to add to the scheduling thing, I mean, the Commanders beat the Cowboys with majority of the Cowboys backups, or I guess you could say backups on offense because all their weapons are out. But like
No,
you
we had
said,
Trey Lance
like,
playing, dude.
yeah,
Come
yeah. So like, I mean, Jesus, yeah.
on.
Oh, oh, this is a
And we
pain.
kept our
Nightmare
quarterback
fuel
from a
right there.
500K incentive.
Yeah, Jerry
Nightmare fuel.
Jones, the billionaire, saved
He's about to win a
$550,000.
Emmy with his acting or whatever
yeah,
it is, a
Emmy,
Grammy.
Yeah, but
Golden
to add
Globe.
to that, I mean, I think that's what adds to the Bucks being favorites as well, is that like you've seen those struggles towards the end of the season and struggling with a Cowboys offense that had basically their O line and Rico Dowdle, um, and having to have a walk off victory, and so I agree with you. I think the Bucks, Baker Mayfield just seems, you know, just like a grittier. He's going to force this team to win, force his team to do well. It seems like he's been able to put like whatever injuries they've had, just put it on his shoulders and kind of carry the team. He's done it multiple times this year. And they've got that running back duo that's been really well this year. However they want to use it, they've got Mike Evans. I know their tight end Kate Otten, who is a big weapon, has kind of been on and off the injured list and whatnot. And the rise of their number two McMillan being a good weapon and whatnot, I think it just kind of tears up that defense. However, I do see Washington putting up some points, so I think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be similar to like the Bills Broncos game, and I have the Bucks winning 31-28.
Yeah, yeah. I think the Commanders, they're going to put up a good fight. They're going to look like they belong in the playoffs. But I think Baker's been, dude. I mean, didn't he have like 40 plus touchdowns this year throwing the ball? Like,
yeah.
I mean, hell yeah.
I think you could make an argument he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Especially this year.
Yeah.
Like he's always under the radar. He in the playoffs he plays good, and I mean he's easily a top 15 quarterback, and he's one of those that like you could name all of your quarterbacks, and then you're like, well, what about Baker Mayfield? And you're like, oh well, I mean,
yeah,
I
would have loved to see Baker play the whole season with both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. They were destroying teams.
Well, I mean, Evans, Godwin, and Otten. At one point, his top three options have been out this year, whether it be a combo. I mean, you could say four with Rashad White or Bucky Irving. At one point, all five of those dudes right there have been out of their lineup, which is insane.
The other thing you could say for Baker Mayfield is I don't think he's ever had like a competent coach or like a high grade offense. Like Todd Bowles is not a good NFL coach. I mean, that one game where Marquise Godwin got injured, Chris Godwin got injured.
Chris Godwin, oh yeah, that was absurd.
An atrocity in all of itself right there. So that and the game management that game made me want to just shoot myself. That was so bad.
It makes you question like coaching Chiefs sometimes. And like Godwin went out and like I think it might have been the Ravens, but it was like Godwin went out with like his leg was turned around and like they strap it up and like Otten and Evans are still. Well, I think Evans had came out earlier that game because he had a hamstring issue.
Yeah,
and
screaming and
Godwin's leg was turned around and then he's just throwing hero balls to Otten. And you're just like, hey, guys, what are y'all doing? Like, take these dudes out of the game.
Yeah, there's like a minute 30 left and you're down 17 and we're still like full-fledged offense. Like, come on.
Yeah, That was and I think Chris Godwin was in a contract year.
Yeah, contract year, and this is like his second year off an ACL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's tough.
All right, now this is an interesting one coming up too. I mean, you got the Minnesota Vikings. They're seeded fifth in the NFC playoffs, and they're visiting the Los Angeles Rams, who are the winner of their division. I can't remember if they're 10-7 or 11-6. I'm kind of blanking. I can't remember if they
I
beat.
think they're 10-7 as
Ten and
well.
seven.
Yeah, because
10-7.
I think they rested versus the Seahawks. Um, but yeah, I mean, last time the Rams and the Vikings played one another, it was the Rams they looked great.
Yeah.
And of course they missed that face mask call in the end zone to Sam Darnold in a situation where they had to drive the length of the field to get in contention with the Rams. And of course the Rams are another team different but similar than the Packers, where it's like we've been beat up all year, but when they've been healthy, the Rams are like dangerous. I mean,
Yeah.
Sean McVay has found a way to outcoach a lot of his opponents. He's still one of the most relevant coaches in the league, in my opinion. Stafford and Puka has taken over that offense over Cooper Kupp and whatnot. So I'm interested to see how this game pans out. But yeah, I'll start with Jacob on your predictions, then we'll work our way around.
Yeah, well, I think just to sum up this year for both these teams, just a whole idea is that like coaching matters, and you could see you've taken, obviously, like you said, with the Rams being beat up all year and to still get to 10-7, half the time, like Puka was out for a while, Kupp was out for a while, Stafford, I think, was out for a game, and to still be 10-7. And then on the flip side, Sam Darnold, who was, cast away from the Jets, cast away from the Panthers, kind of showed a little bit of life at the 49ers. But like we say, if you can't succeed in the 49ers offense, it's like, it might be time to take a
Yeah.
look in the mirror.
Yeah.
And you see Sam Darnold have the year he's had and then go 14-3. It just shows like, hey, coaching matters. Now, obviously, the weapons on offense for the Vikings are also absurd. If you sit and think about it, you have, obviously Jetta, Addison, Hawkinson, who's come back this year, plus a running back, Aaron Jones. Like, you've got some dudes on offense. And so I think these last two games, the Bucks and Commanders, Vikings, and Rams, I think these are going to be our two exciting games. I have the Vikings winning this one just because I think overall they're I think they're a little better on defense. And we've kind of seen the Rams throw some duds out the back half of the season, and with the mysterious disappearance of Cooper Kupp, I don't know what's kind of gone on with that. Obviously, Puka's very good, but it's just been kind of weird how they haven't used both of them as efficiently. But I have the Vikings winning this 24-21.
Yeah, like Ryan.
Yeah. Minnesota's favored -2.5. Over under is 47.5. Man, I liked the Vikings all year. We kept saying that the Vikings were gonna have their breakdown, or they were gonna have, some kind of atrocity. When they were at that like 4-0, 5-0 stage. But I mean, they've been a solid team all year, except for last week. I don't know if you guys watched that game, but the Lions just made an absolute pansy out of the Vikings. I mean, Sam Darnold looked like he was, as his term, seeing ghosts, and they just kind of looked disorganized. And I think Kevin O'Connell is a fantastic coach. His record in one-score games is like, I think he's lost one game out of like 12, so he's like 12-1. And somebody's gonna have to fact check me on that, but he's got really good statistics and that. But if you would have told me in week 17 this was the matchup, I would have picked the Vikings. But this could be recency bias. But what I saw in week 18 from the Vikings, I'm not too sure on them moving forward. And for the flipping over to the Rams, I just think that they're a scratchy football team, or scrappy, excuse me. And I think they have one of the best coaches in the NFL. I think out of that Shanahan tree, McVay's been probably the most convincing to me, and he just finds ways to win around people when they're healthy. And so, just what I saw last week, I know teams can bounce back, but I have the Rams in an upset. I just have a feeling that McVay can figure out how to make Darnold not look great. It's been a great year for the Vikings, but just that Week 18 game is just gonna haunt them. I think Darnold might retain back to his old Darnold, and I just also don't think they can beat the Eagles either. So I have the Rams winning this game. Kind of going out on a limb, but I have the Rams winning 24-17.
There we go.
Well, you're not the only one. I also have the Rams winning this game. I'm going to take Stafford's playoff experience over, Darnold, first time ever being in the playoffs, if I remember. I mean, besides being the backup in San Francisco, but I don't think the lights have ever been this bright for Sam Darnold. So it's just like kind of going into the unknown for a quarterback that's had a great year. And, I think he's lost both times. He's lost both times to the Lions, which just kind of scares me. But when you go to Stafford, it's like looking at what this team can do without all the players that they've had, throughout the year. It's like, oh, this guy's out, but we're going into this game with no receivers essentially, and Stafford's still putting up great production. They can lean on Kyron Williams, and kind of going back to what Jacob hinted at on the AFC side is that they have multiple ways they can win. Do I see the Vikings? Can I see the Vikings winning this game? Like, yeah, I still have. It's not like I have a lack of confidence in the Vikings. I just think I'm going to go with outcoach, like the better coach and the better playoff experience and performance historically. I'm going to lean very slightly on the Rams winning this one 23-20. Honestly, I could see it on a last minute field goal drive because Stafford, that's his specialty. Late comeback drives, and the Rams escape with a victory. So, but a lot to look forward to for the Vikings. I mean, a fantastic year. I would hate to see it end after going 14-3 or whatever it was, but yeah, I think the Rams pull it off. All right, before we get into the college football atmosphere, which one thing to pick as a disparity between the NFL and the college football atmosphere is that you can kind of predict the NFL a lot easier than college football, as we've seen in the playoffs this year and whatnot. And it's just so much more exciting because you can go, well, the impossible can happen in college football. And then with NFL, you're like, well, this team's they made it in, but the other team's clearly better. And I don't know, it's just more entertaining. We've mentioned it off the record. It's like, well, we kind of checked out when week 18 hit for the NFL. It's like, but we're locked into the college football. But before we get into that, I think there's a lot of down bad list candidates out there that we can get into.
Yeah.
And, we might all have the same one or ones, and we might all have different ones. I don't know. But you got to give it to the DB list specialist over here, the medical guy. He's wiping his fingers, getting ready, scratching his toenails on the cardboard.
Yeah. Let's get into this. I have 4. I'll bring up the obvious one. We don't have to, I guess, necessarily get into the nooks and crannies of it. Some would say crevices, but we don't have to get into it. But obviously, whatever the brothel situation going on at Fox. So yeah, that's definitely one over there. I put Fox lawsuit and quote unquote casualties because there seem to have been a lot of people ignore the actual lawsuit and pay attention more to the casualties of people mentioned in the lawsuit that they didn't necessarily do anything wrong. They just their names are thrown in there. So
they're head deep in the lawsuit. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously the lawsuit came out about Skip Bayless allegedly paying an absurd amount for some pleasantries from someone of the opposite gender.
Timing this really well.
Yeah. So
that's the way around it. Yeah.
So obviously the lawsuit is the main DB part of it. However, paying $1.5 million for lack of better terms, a female.
Yeah.
That's a large payment.
Allegedly, like you mentioned.
Yeah. So hopefully that all gets figured out and whatnot in there. But I'll go on to my number two. Jason Whitlock. The comments he said, I'm like, hey, first off, brother, no. Second off, what are you doing, dude? Like, that's not even, like, that's just creepy. That's gross. That's made me look at peanut butter in a totally different light. Like, I just don't get that. And also, you're contradicting yourself, brother, because, like, as we can all remember, he was a past DB candidate for what was shown on his quote unquote, I don't want to say search engine, but his ads when he was looking at like ESPN or something, and it said like gifts for boyfriend or like, you know, sex toys for male, blah blah blah, and it's like, whoa. So you're not fooling any of us. We remember what was on your screen, dog.
Yes.
So yeah, Jason Whitlock had to be my, I guess, 1B DB list candidate. So I'll let y'all go into what y'all's were as well.
Really good job working through that in a corporate manner. Like,
hey, I can, get through the maze there. So my wife works in contracts, so I can word it however we need to.
All right, the analyst.
Yeah, I'm pretty good at corporate jargon, but that
jargon
was
being
well executed. So obviously that was the golden DB list candidate. I have some other fun ones that probably nobody else thought of. I have Zeke Believers on here. Him getting there's still people on Twitter that are defending him after, the whole Rico going out and bawling and him getting released, and he's like, he just needs an opportunity. And it's like, how many more opportunities does the guy need? He's not.
Yeah.
He sucks now. So anyway, I have the Zeke on there. The other one I have on there is Mexico, and the reason I have Mexico on there is because Trump is promising today to name the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And I just think that's funny because, like, have you ever thought about it? Like, Trump is like the master of like coming out and saying that Trump is like
corporate jargon master.
He's like the master of coming out and saying something like this, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna name it the Gulf of America, and you like read it and you're like, man, I never really cared to like think of like we should rename this, but you're like, you know what? Yeah, you know what? Let's do it. Let's. As an American, you're like, you know what? Screw it. I'm all in. Let's do it. So anyway, those are the other two I had outside of the major Fox Sports brothel situation.
Yeah, those are good. Yeah. And it's funny because like they're looking at Greenland and Canada too, and it's like he's gonna, get in Greenland. Ain't no damn green out here, and then be in Canada and be like, we're renaming Canada Canada. It's like, okay, like that's hilarious. Mine is kind of in relation to, well, it's in the mainstream media portion, and it's kind of a funny one, but it's definitely not as like golden as the ones that were brought up. I'm gonna go with Shannon Sharp because, and not in relation to the lawsuit or anything like that, because I know he was name dropped or whatever outside of that portion of discussion. But Dan Orlovsky and him were on a show, and he goes, Dan, Do, if you are the elite statistician right here, and you got all your stats in front of you, why don't you tell me the last time a Triple Crown winner didn't make the playoffs or whatever it was? And he was like, your brother?
That was funny.
Shannon Sharp's like, what? That was 30 years. I mean, he couldn't even stay still, dude. I was like, oh my God. And Dan, Orlovsky, I guess I want to put him on the anti-DB list because then he went on the Pat McAfee show and started dropping uncomfortable conversation hints.
That was hilarious.
If you get my gist there. that was hilarious. So he's been on a roll as of late. Dan Orlovsky's been cooking. But yeah, Shannon Sharp on there for kind of getting humbled on live television. So it was pretty funny to see. But yeah, do you have two more?
Yeah, I have
list,
two
or?
more. Obviously, these are more sport related. So, third one would be the New York Giants. Came out today that they are not getting rid of Dayball or the GM. And after the just absolute cluster of just how they handled this situation at the quarterback spot this year, and plus, with Saquon going off, and then seeing all like the different things on Hard Knocks and all the snippets and everything coming out about how they handled that situation and stuff, for them to not like get, I don't want to just be that crude, but get rid of like the two people that put them in that situation. More or less, I guess Dayball doesn't really have as much control as the GM and whatnot. But at the same time, this is what Dayball's third year,
Yeah,
and
maybe fourth,
he
third,
won
fourth.
3 games. And I saw a stat or something that it's been like, I don't know, 20 years since someone's only won 3 games in their third year and hasn't been fired as a coach. And so, obviously, as a Cowboys fan, great. Y'all keep doing you.
Yeah.
There's someone out there that seems to be worse at handling situations than our front office. But I thought that was pretty brutal to see that, like, because they just absolutely mishandled that whole situation. Um,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
agree.
from top to bottom, getting rid of Daniel Jones, which, say what you want, y'all weren't going anywhere. Um, and then to be like, hey, this guy we signed as a backup that actually isn't terrible. Nah, you're not going to play. We're going to put in Tommy DeVito. And then, like,
Yes.
within a week, go to, Drew Lock. So that was obviously DB list candidate. And then y'all are probably going to find this funny, or maybe not. But obviously, with the college football playoffs, we got to put the SEC on the
Yeah.
DB list. Just because we've heard all the talks about how these people should have got in or these people should have got in and yada yada yada, and then uh, and I know obviously the Georgia situation with the backup quarterback, I pick at Tennessee, uh, and how that game turned out, but just to see like the showing of the SEC teams outside of Texas, who was in their first year, even though some could argue had a little better draw. Okay, but we could go into how the college football playoffs need to be reseeded and everything of that at a different time. But to just see like the one SEC team that is new that everybody kind of were like, oh, they haven't played anybody, da, 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 and
Yeah.
then you watch Georgia get thumped, and then you watch Tennessee just get, I mean, obliterated.
Yes.
It's just tough to see. So as you've seen now that you can legally pay players, some of these schools, it's obviously going to even the playing field. And so just putting them on a little sub DB list for them. So
Yeah. It was an off year for the SEC. And if y'all have listened to the show, like, you know, I've been attacking that. Like, I mean, it's
yeah,
just been,
yeah,
you got to be
absolutely.
honest. Like,
Yeah.
it's a
And to
bad
see
year.
like their performances in the games that weren't the college football playoffs, because they didn't sit anybody. Like Jalen Milroe in Alabama played Michigan, looked awful. That was awful.
Yes. Yes.
South Carolina lost.
A&M
Who
lost.
A&M? Sorry, I was going to forget them, but A&M lost. And it was just tough to see. So
The one team I kind of wanted to see lose, but didn't in a bowl game was Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin did a lot of talking and then like backed it up.
yeah,
Unfortunately, the one time where it didn't matter.
yeah. Didn't they play
Um,
Duke or something?
yeah,
Yeah,
Duke
Yeah,
with
Duke.
their
Duke.
third string quarterback or
Their
something.
quarterback that hadn't thrown a pass in a month.
Yes,
I
yeah.
was
yeah,
like, oh, yeah. So it's like, hooray for that. The whatever the you know Duke's Mayo Bowl or wherever they played in. It's like I get that and whatnot, but like the other teams
Quiznos Bowl.
played. Yeah, the other teams played teams that actually had their players.
Yeah,
You know, Ole Miss did the whole like Georgia thing last year, where it's like, no, we're going to play our players. And it's like, okay, we're playing a Duke team that doesn't have a quarterback, multiple people sitting out. Come on, dude. Like,
yes,
good job, great job, Lane Kiffin.
exactly. All right. Gotta say, hell of a DB list segment there.
Yes.
Let's get into the college football semifinals. And I guess college football coverage in general, we are around the hour mark here. So we can choose. I'll let y'all choose whether or not, like when you guys start discussing these matchups, kind of what happened previously, we can kind of trickle it in however y'all see fit. But yeah, we got an interesting group of matchups here. Some might disagree, some might agree, but you got Notre Dame playing against Penn State in the Orange Bowl semifinal, and then you got Ohio State playing Texas in the Cotton Bowl. And I think what's interesting about this, if you go by conference, you get an FBS independent Notre Dame, you get two Big Ten teams, Penn State and Ohio State, which, Oregon missed out, obviously getting kind of ran through by Ohio State. Yeah, belt to ass.
BTA.
And then an SEC team in Texas. So you kind of got, a lot of big name brands outside. You got more than two conferences technically. And it kind of played out in a way that, the 12-team playoff conference was favored to go, I guess is the best way to put it. You didn't have, one ACC team. You didn't have a Big 12. You didn't have, whatnot.
Mountain West.
But everybody got their shot.
Yeah.
And, I've kind of gone on about like how the SEC had their off year, but those teams didn't get in, and really about two teams from each conference outside of like the Big 12, the Mountain West, got their shot. And it's kind of impossible to have more than that. So when the SEC was complaining and whining about like, oh, well, we should have gone in and we should have gone in, there was no separating factor. So it kind of all played out the way that the CFP's committee, the hand that they were dealt, they had no choice. They were kind of like backed in the corner to say, well, you left us no choice. Got to go with what we got. And it's led us to here in the semifinal. So I guess we can start with the Orange Bowl with Notre Dame and Penn State. And like I said, y'all can trickle in what's happened in the quarterfinal and kind of go whatever route you see fit in your analysis. But the Analyst, you look like you have something you want to say. You look like you got something on your mind down there.
Going through the Rolodex.
Yeah. So I guess the Notre Dame and Penn State game, I guess we can start with Penn State. They look pretty decent lately. They were kind of up and down all year. They had a pretty easy schedule. Huh?
So I can tell you why they look pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'm about to get there. Yeah. But I also think that the reason is they look so good is the result of who they are playing. SMU, while they were a lot of fun to watch, electric team, I like them a ton. They had a lot of offense. Not very good against Penn State when the quarterback throws 3 interceptions in the first half. So, and then the game that I didn't watch a lot of, but I was keeping track of, Boise State. I mean, that's just not. I know they have Ashton Genty, but that's the only reason they were really there. That's just 2 games back to back, and when we were on the podcast earlier, this was the easiest path to the play or the championship, in my opinion, was Penn State's route.
Yes.
Their defense is probably second best behind Texas that's left, but I just don't think they're solid enough on offense if they get behind. So that leads me into Notre Dame. To me, Notre Dame is probably playing the second best ball right now. They handled Georgia very well, and they also handled Indiana with no consequences. That game was very boring, but if you look at deep down and you look at the guts of that game, Notre Dame handled that Indiana very well, and that game against Georgia, they looked good. So I like them to advance here. I like Notre Dame 24-21.
Nice. Yeah. So going in with that, I agree a little bit with what Ryan was saying. But to touch on Jared's point leading into this subject is, college football got what I kind of think they needed in this playoff is they got 4 blue blood teams, right? They've got historical, have always been around, have always been pretty good teams. Obviously, you talk about Texas in their last since Mac Brown years, how they had that weird limbo of where they just sucked. Um, but outside of that, Texas has always been very good. Penn State has always been very good. Notre Dame has been around since the beginning of time. And then Ohio State, obviously, blue blood team. Okay. And so just to touch on that. Now, to touch on the actual game, I 100% agree with Ryan about Notre Dame's defense, and I'll take the L on that. From the beginning of the year when we talked about them, I didn't think their defense was very good because, as we've talked about in other subjects, of who they play. Right? They played some teams outside of A&M and a couple other teams that are usually not that great. Okay, and so their defense obviously looks like a top 5 defense when you don't play crazy good teams. However, what was interesting to me is how bad the quarterback play was from the Notre Dame quarterback against Georgia. I know he won the MVP, but if you go back and look, like, dude had 88 yards. Like, you could have, like, literally could have handed it to anybody else. Hell, you could have handed it to the kicker. I think the kicker had, like, 15 points of their 23. Something crazy like that. And so, to me, I think that's going to be the separator right here. Is if Notre Dame's quarterback can be just okay. Now on the Penn State side, I think their offense is obviously better. It's going to be interesting to see what their defense does. Now, I will say, like we've all said at the beginning, they had the easiest route. However, I think that's helped them in a way because it's helped that quarterback build confidence. Because remember at the end of the year, they played Ohio State, Oregon in the Big 30 championship, and he looked really good. And since then, he's looked really good. And so I'm going to be interested to see how both of them play. But I think that's going to be the biggest determining factor is how well the quarterbacks are going to play. If obviously it sounds cliche, limit the turnovers. I think it's going to be more indicative of if Notre Dame's quarterback, Riley Leonard, I believe, if he can make 4 to 5 big throws, and I don't even mean like, oh, these bombs down the field, but, like a 3rd and 8, inside, your own 20 or whatever to keep the drive going and get out of your side of the field. I think it's going to be 4 to 5 of those throws right there that he's going to have to make. If he can make them, I think Notre Dame wins. Now, in saying all that, I have Penn State winning this game. I think the quarterback and the offense is better. And Notre Dame hasn't really played an offense either, right? They played Indiana, who we all kind of, the writing was on the wall. They played whoever else, Georgia, right? Who didn't have an offense. So they knew like, hey, if we can hold them, if we can score 15 points, we win. They did. And so I think that's what's going to be interesting there. So I have Penn State winning 31-24.
Yeah. And good takes, and with Penn State on my side of the argument, Drew Allard, I don't think he's a bad quarterback at all. I think he's making a really good decision to stay another year because I think I gave him a hard time this year, but next year I really think they're going to be forced to be reckoned with. They're working with 2 running backs that are over 1,000 yards rushing, either 1,000 yards rushing or 1,000 total yards. I don't want to get that wrong, but both really, really efficient running backs. And like you said, the confidence booster going into the last 3 games, putting up 37 against Oregon and then, destroying SMU and then destroying Boise State. And then you go into Notre Dame, which, going back to all the way back to week 1, we went into the Texas A&M game. I doubted that their defense was as good as Kirk Herbstreit, claimed. And as the season has progressed outside of the Northern Illinois game that everybody likes to mention is that secondary is elite. There's going to be a lot of draft picks out of Notre Dame. And, I talked about, Riley Leonard not being able to throw a touchdown pass, I think, until like week 4 or 5 in the season. And that's their weakest link is the quarterback. And I think the strongest link for the Penn State unit is their quarterback and their 2 running backs. So with that being said, I think I like a strong defense, but I think Drew Allard, I think he gets it done. I think he outplays Riley Leonard. I think Riley Leonard has a tough time moving the football. Um, and, they're finally going against a formidable starting quarterback opponent, to put in simple terms. So I think Penn State wins this game 28-24, and advances to the national championship. And I think that's kind of a joke on me because I've been doubting them the whole year. And I think that's why they're going to win. They're just it's like, there you go. You doubted us the whole year. And then you have to find excuses and avenues to say, well, here's why they got in and have to defend it. So that's why I'm kind of leaning Penn State as well. Just kind of like the writing on the wall for karma, I guess you could call it. So, all right. Flipping over. Ryan, you did your prediction, right? You went first. Okay. Just make sure. Okay. Flipping over to the Iowa State, Texas side. Now I think this one's a little more interesting is because I believe the Notre Dame and Penn State's pretty dang even. Now, in this matchup, you get Ohio State that has been on a tear the last 2-3 games. And, is it Jeremiah Smith, the freshman?
Oh, yeah.
Dude is an absolute stud, starting to spark up debates about whether you should have the 3-year role in college football because some argue he could be a top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. Will Howard is making the throws to make them look like an NFL team. And then you got on the flip side, Texas. They've kind of done their jobs throughout the whole year. Have they done it in an electrifying fashion? No. I mean, outside of playing like Georgia and losing those 2 games, all their other wins haven't really been big pop exciting. And you kind of leave every game, in my opinion, expecting more, where you're like, well, I expected more from this team. And when you got to play Arizona State in the quarterfinal, Cam Scadaboo obviously went off. I call him Skibbity. Cam Skibbity, went off over 100 yards receiving or whatever it was, over 100 yards rushing, threw the ball too. And it's just going to OT with that team. It's hard to go into this matchup confident in Texas. And at the same time, you can provide the argument that they win the games, not in the grandest fashion, but they win the games. So I don't think this is going to be a big blowout like some people are predicting it. I still think that Texas defensive unit is legit. I think that front seven, I mean, we've seen it, the past 4 weeks where just these incredible goal line stands. And they're stuffing them at the goal line. And you're just like, okay. So I want to give that respect to Texas in this matchup. So I'll leave the floor for Jacob here going into this game because technically aren't you a little bit of a Texas fan? Grew up kind of a little 75% Texas, 25%. Well, Arkansas, but
yeah,
Arkansas.
Yeah, Arkansas. Yeah, Gramps says every week you play somebody in the SEC. Well, you get Ohio State. So what are your predictions on this game and your outlook and coverage?
Yeah, so I agree with you 100% on the Texas side of it. I've termed it as like Texas, they seem to play with their food a little bit, right? And so like when they sorry, Ryan. But like with the Arizona State game, like that game should have been in the bag in the first half. Like you came out, you were the better team. Hell, you had a punt return for a touchdown. And it just seemed like they just played with their food. And so where Ohio State, flip side, has done the opposite. They've said like, hey, and I'll take the L on this. I thought they were going to come out defeated against Tennessee or they played Tennessee and they, trumped them. And then they came out against Oregon. And I guess everybody on Oregon was still smoking on that Dylan Gabriel pack because I think Dylan Gabriel's a great quarterback. And he came out there and looked like he was a freshman getting his first start. I mean, obviously they put up 21 points, but I mean, Ohio State looked like they did everything right, and which they did, obviously. Now, going into Texas, I think this is going to obviously be a better defensive team that Ohio State's facing. And then also with Texas, okay, I've been kind of knocking on Quinn Ewers. I think I do have to give him his flowers in this playoff at least.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the last two games, they have not been able to run the ball worth a damn. And Quinn Ewers has had to throw the ball so much. And I know everybody's going to look at some throws and be like, well, he missed here, he blah, 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 blah. He doesn't throw it with zip. The dude's having to throw it like 45 times a game. And him making that throw in overtime against Arizona State with essentially a lot of momentum against him and putting it where it needed to be, making the check or whatever. I mean, that to me proved like, hey, this dude can do it. Okay. He could throw it. He could carry the team. Now, he may not look like the most athletic quarterback out there, obviously, but to me, he's proved a lot in this playoffs. Now, saying that, Ohio State, I mean, dude, they have weapons. Like, to me, it's been just mind boggling how we've had to question, like, Travion Henderson, Judkins, Jeremiah Smith, the other receiver in Buka or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It was supposed to be a top draft pick. And it's just been very interesting. You've had to question them all year. So I think this is going to be a fun game. I think this is going to be the one, everybody, like obviously the Penn State game, everybody's going to be tuning into that. I think this one's obviously going to be like one where like you're watching that the whole way through. And saying that, I will go with my Texas bias here. I don't think this is going to be a blowout. I think Texas is going to win this game 34-31. Okay.
Ooh.
I think it's going to be a shootout. However, I could definitely see Ohio State winning this game. I think this is going to be by far the best offense that Texas has faced, in the last 20 years. So, but I'm going to ride with the Longhorns. Okay. Poke them. Okay. But I won't be surprised if they get beat. So I will let y'all take the floor on that.
I'll let Ryan go next. I like it. Good analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jacob nailed UT right on the head. I watched that game against Arizona State, and they got up 14-0, and I sent one of our friends a text. I was like, "Yeah, this game's over. Pack it up." And then as you watch the game, they just kind of sat there and did nothing with the game and almost lost. And you could also argue that no call targeting, that was a little bit questionable as well. But you have to give him credit for getting this far, though. Kind of what Jared's saying. They've handled their opponents, and they are where they are. So they beat Clemson, and they beat Arizona State. So they are one win away. And their defense, I think they are the best defense left. I think Penn State's pretty good, but I think Texas is better. I just have watched a couple more Texas games. I'll say that, but Texas' defense is solid. It's probably the most solid defense in the nation. Flipping over to Ohio State, they are easily playing the best ball in the playoffs right now. And
Yeah.
I think this stems from the Michigan loss and how embarrassing it was. I think that clearly pissed off Ohio State, and they are playing pissed off football right now. So based off of what I've seen in the playoffs so far, I'm going to take Ohio State to win this game 45-31 in a shootout. I think it's going to turn into a very fun game. I think this is going to be the best game out of both of the playoffs all weekend. I think this is going to be the best game. I will definitely be tuning into it for sure. So obviously, but yeah, I like Ohio State to win it all. I really do. I think they just, based on the last two games, they have looked just phenomenal. You got to say, I mean, they look phenomenal right now. They made Oregon, who's been a very consistent team all year, look like crap. And then they made Tennessee, who's been a pretty good team all year. I mean, they beat the crap out of Tennessee. So I just like Ohio State riding on this high tide right now.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think if Ohio State loses this game, they're still going to call for Ryan Day to be fired, which is, I think, hilarious from Ohio State fans.
Yeah.
But, I kind of covered most of the aspect of this game. I kind of thought of some other things with, Will Howard historically against Texas, I believe, is 0-4 from Kansas State. So, and it's interesting because, Kansas State's always been that we're going to, give you a fight. We're going to be that spoiler in the conference. And Will Howard was the leader of the charge playing against Texas in that time and came close in a lot of matchups. But this is a different ball game. You got a different coach. You got a new system. You're playing the hot hand right now. But on the flip side, on the contrary, with Texas, I really believe that this side of the bracket, whoever is the winner of this game is the winner of the national championship. I'm a 100% believer in that. If Texas gets in and plays either Penn State or Notre Dame, I've got Texas. If Ohio State wins and plays either Notre Dame or Penn State, I've got Ohio State. For this game, though, I'm with y'all on the shootout for sure. Picking a winner, I've been sitting here in the last week just kind of, I just haven't really been able to choose because, like, Texas has done their job, essentially. They're not a guy they're not going to just not show up, in my opinion. I think Quinn Ewers has showed resiliency through injury. And I'm going to try not to go based off the way they've been playing and go based off how I believe it will play out. And Texas is going to win this game 38-34.
Wow.
I don't know how. I'm going gut feeling here, and I'm probably going to be dead wrong because my gut feeling never really works out. But I'm going to be different here, and because I've kind of gotten executed in the past for picking the wrong teams, Tennessee, and you're just like, I don't know. But I think the SEC, in the aspect of how the season has gone and how the playoffs have gone and how the bowl games have gone, I think they're pissed off. I think they go into this game and go, you want to see what the SEC can do? And I know they're a brand new team, the SEC. I don't know. Maybe they're pissed off and they play a little harder and, put a stop to it. But, and I don't like the decision. I
don't like that. I really don't.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
My argument to that is they had to miss a bailout targeting play to beat Arizona State, who is not very good this year.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Going into a game, it's like, all right, new game, learn from mistakes. And
I don't know. I don't know. I've watched that Arizona State game, and I'm not convinced.
Now, if it happened, like if Ohio State wins, I'll go, makes sense, totally. Like, but if they don't, I'll be like, I told you. So I don't know. I'm gonna go into it believing it. I guess I have faith in it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think part of my
might be a dumbass
hatred is I have people at work that are UT fans that after they got spanked by Georgia were crying and complaining about how they never should have joined the SEC because it's too hard and it's really hard to get into the playoffs and we have to just play everybody. We just should have played in the Big 12. And I'm like, and now that they're in the college football semifinal, the conversation has changed to where it's like, we are the SEC, and I'm like, oh my God, make up your mind. Did you want to play in the SEC, or do you want to be the SEC Golden Boy? Which one is it? So anyway.
I might need to put on the record it might be 50% going out on a limb and 50% reverse psychology. Just leave it at that.
There we go.
Jacob's the only one in here. Like, shut up.
Yeah,
so, it's okay. In
the show.
if they, I could, like I said, I could easily see Ohio State winning this. Like you said, they seem to be riding the hot hand and whatnot. It's just, I don't know. It seems like this year has been the year for Texas where a lot of things have, even when they've gone wrong, they've kind of gone right. And whatnot. So this is where I could see, Texas, if all things align, Texas plays Notre Dame in the national championship, and it's like a 12-3 game or something stupid. That's just kind of where I'm basing it off of.
Yeah.
Watch it come down to the Texas kicker.
Jesus.
And him just drill it right down the middle.
Jesus. Or Sarkisian in his own kicker and being like, hey, bud, you got this.
Yeah. Hey, somebody said he was talking to the kicker versus Arizona State to win it, and he said that speech must have been dog shit.
Yeah. Hey, man,
well, they should have put their golden boy Matthew McConaughey out there and let him talk to him.
Yeah,
they love shrining him as like Jesus Christ of UT. So
the vibes
every time he gets on my screen, I'm like, oh my God, dude, what does he do? Stands on the sideline going,
You're gonna have Vince Young, Colt McCoy, like
Oh, those make
Shipley.
sense. They were like
Yeah.
the all
You're gonna have them all at the
stars.
game.
Like,
Glenn Powell.
they were the
them.
dudes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They should be
Like,
there.
shit,
So,
put Ricky Williams on the sideline for me or something. Make me feel
Yes.
better about myself, but not like
Yeah.
not someone that's just like, hey, you know what? I went to UT.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So did like a million other people. Anyway.
I love last thing. I love messing with Texas fans that are like, "What are we doing?" I'm like, "We." Like,
Oh, dude, yeah,
Dude,
yeah, I love it.
They get so mad. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm just messing with you guys." Like, it's
Anytime
okay to
I
be a
talk
fan.
about any of the teams I root for, I'll be like, I mean, the Razorbacks are like the Astros. It's like, not me.
What's worse when you didn't go there.
we.
Like, and I think that's a lot of UT fans that there's like
Oh, me.
I've had this conversation. Like the people I work with, they went to UT. But anyway,
I would say the same about
be-
Ryan, but at the same time, he'll go off on the Aggies and say about you had that one night where the Bearcats won their bowl game and you were just ripping me to shreds
yeah,
over text, and I was like, all right, this dude definitely is not an Aggie. Like, this dude is not one of those
I
guys.
am an Aggie, but they
yeah.
I like my whole family's A&M Aggies, and I like the Aggies, but
Yeah.
oh my god,
Yeah.
that team is just.
But you are a
infuriating.
Bearcat. Like, you are like through and through. Like, you go to the games, and that's your true blood.
I like our little Moneyball team we got rolling down. So
Yeah, my Wii team is the Lumberjacks, and the only thing I like about them is the coach. Like, outside of that, like, they're never very good, but the coach apparently is awesome. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we'll see how it all plans out. Good pod, though, boys. Covered all. We dotted every I and crossed every T. So
there we go.
Uncomfortable conversation. Uncomfortable conversations with the Longhorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week, and we'll see how we did with the predictions and whatnot. And we'll obviously more focused on the college football than the NFL. So next week will be the national championship, which is sad to say the college football season is ending. Which perhaps maybe we'll get into college baseball. Who knows?
Hey, there we go.
So, all right. We'll see y'all next week. Be sure to share this with your friends. Check us out on all social media platforms with the tag at Shatter the Script. And boys, Happy New Year. Ryan, awaiting the child. Good luck to you, brother. By next week, you might be a father. So.
I might be calling Jacob.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay. You'll be checking Google a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Deuces, everybody.